of hammered silver. Silver is in typology a picture of redemption. And use them for calling the community together and for having the camps set out. When both are sounded, the whole community is to assemble before you at the entrance to the tent of meeting, which was the tabernacle. If only one is sounded, the leaders, the heads of the clans of Israel, are to assemble before you. When a trumpet blast is sounded, the tribes camping on the east are to set out. At the sounding of a second blast, the camps on the south are to set out. The blast will be the signal for setting out to gather the assembly, blow the trumpets, but not with the same signal. The church is not the same as Israel. This still has its fulfillment in Israel, but you see, with the birth of the church and the church age, you now have one of these trumpet sounds, one of these trumpet signals to gather God's people, the bride of Christ, to be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. And so too does another trumpet gather Israel together. Now, if you're taking notes or if you want the handout, this is going to be key to your understanding of the distinction as you delineate the difference between these two trumpets, okay? I told you you're going to need to put your thinking cap on. First of all, you have the last trumpet, which is for us, and you have the first trumpet, which is for Israel. Two different trumpets. Now, the last trumpet for us is in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 51 through 52. The first trumpet for Israel is Exodus 19, verses 16 through 17. Again, to gather God's people. Now, the last trumpet is not the seventh trumpet in Revelation 10:7, which happens at the middle of the tribulation, but which, by the way, what happens at the middle of the tribulation? That's right. Israel realizes, you know what? This Christ that we've embraced is the Antichrist. He's not our Messiah. And they come to a saving knowledge of the true Christ. For the last half of the tribulation, for the last 3.5 years, they flee to Petra. The whole house of Israel gets saved. Again, that's the purpose of the tribulation, right? What, you guys know the song. The purpose of the tribulation for the salvation of the Jewish nation. Everybody now. That's the purpose of the tribulation. It's for the salvation of the Jewish nation who will come to a saving knowledge of their true Messiah at the middle of the tribulation. When that trumpet, that seventh trumpet, the trumpet sounds and Israel comes together and comes to Christ. But and this is where replacement theology gets in trouble. It does not refer to the church. There's another trumpet for Israel, and that's why the Feast of Trumpets can have two meanings, two fulfillments prophetically in one person, the person of Jesus Christ. Exodus 19. Thursday nights we'll be looking at this study. The first trumpet on the morning of the third day. Really? Hosea 6:2. Interesting verse. After 2 days. Now, what do we know to be true about 2 days? 2 days unto the Lord is like 2,000 years for us. The Jews for 2,000 years now have been wandering, and on the third day, He will revive us, speaking of Israel, Hosea 6:2. And He will restore us that we may live in His presence. And what is the purpose of a trumpet sound? The purpose of a trumpet sound is to gather God's people. Israel is the wife of God. The church is the bride of Christ. Therein lies the difference and the distinction and the delineation, if you will. And so it was for Israel to meet the Lord. And again, this could possibly be the same as the first day of the seventh month. See, understand, we are about to enter into the first day of the 7,000th year. See, we're at that 6,000 years. Again, 1,000 years is like 1 day. 1,000 years for us is like 1 day, Peter says, for the Lord. So this first trumpet was for Israel, the last trumpet for us. Now you have another distinction. Now watch this. You have the trumpet of God or the trumpet of angels. The trumpet of God is for us. The trumpet of angels is for Israel. We find this in 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17, when it says that the trumpet call of God, the dead in Christ, will rise first. That's God sounding that trumpet. Well, with Israel, Matthew 24, verses 20 through 22, and then verse 31, it's not the trumpet of God, because it's not for us. It's the trumpet of angels, because it's for Israel. You see the distinction? Again, Numbers tells us there were two signals. There were two trumpets. One of those trumpets is for Israel, and one of those trumpets is for the church. And that's why I believe this feast has its fulfillment, not just in the church, but also for Israel as well. And you can do that. You don't have to replace Israel with the church to do that, to fulfill that. It's the voice of the archangel in 1 Thessalonians 4 with the trumpet call of God. This again is where replacement theology gets into it. Deep kimchi. When they try to take that last trumpet of angels in Matthew 24, and when it says that God will, gather his elect, well, we're his elect, right? Yeah, but there's a distinction there. Again, it's the first trumpet for us, first trumpet for Israel, last trumpet for us, trumpet of God for us, trumpet of angels for Israel. You have to make that distinction, or you'll turn your eschatology into a pretzel and be so confused, you won't know which way is up. The rapture of the church of Jesus Christ can happen at any minute. That trumpet can sound. And the dead in Christ will rise first. And we who are alive and remain will meet them in the air. I love what the Apostle Paul said to the Thessalonian church. When he said about the rapture hasn't come yet. Understand, the Thessalonians thought they thought they missed the rapture. How depressing is that? Could you imagine? On the mainland, we had daylight savings time. We don't have it in Hawaii, thank God. But over there, when I was pastoring, we would have, 3 services at one time. We had 3 services. But we would have to set our clocks forward or, spring forward or fall back. That was the only way I could remember it. 1 hour. So people would come to church and there's nobody there. They're like, I missed the rapture. No, Jesus, please. And then somebody starts showing up. Oh, thank you. That was the Thessalonian church. They thought they missed the rapture. That's why the Apostle Paul writes to this church 2 letters, says, guys, you didn't miss the rapture. There's some things that you need to know about the rapture. Again, I think he was telling them, you not only need to know about, that the rapture is going to happen, but you need to know why and when the rapture could happen, in that it could happen at any minute. But he says in there that about the rapture, after he describes the rapture, the dead in Christ will rise first. And then he says, I love these words, therefore, encourage each other with these words. Now stay with me, okay? For all your mid-trib, Christian friends, okay, ask them this question. Or even post-trib, ask them this question. Why would the Apostle Paul talk about the rapture and that when it happens, the dead in Christ will rise first, we who are alive and remain will meet them in the air, and then after that say, therefore, encourage each other with these words? It doesn't fit anything but a pre-tribulation rapture. Can you imagine that? Paul writes to the Thessalonians, and it's a mid or post-tribulation rapture. The dead in Christ are going to rise first, and we who are alive and remain are going to be caught up in the meet of the Lord in the air. And then, but you're going to have to go through, a third of the earth's population is just going to be wiped out. Mountains will be plucked out and cast into the sea. Hailstones are going to be, that's not very encouraging to me. That doesn't encourage me. You mean I have to go through that first? No, shoot me now. It doesn't fit. He's trying to encourage them that the rapture of the church will come before the 7-year tribulation. Again, the trumpets, you need to understand. You need to know why you believe what you believe. And I believe that this feast was given not just for Israel, but for us as well, because you have 2 trumpets. For us, it gathers us to meet the Lord in the air. For Israel, it gathers them to meet the Lord in the tribulation. while we're celebrating, they're going to be tribulating, as one has said.